Good morning, everyone. I'm Deandra Glover-Thomas, Program Coordinator for the Kentucky Autism Training Center, and I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar, Toilet Training Children with Autism, and it will be presented today by Kim Howard, who is a field trainer for KATC. Feel free to ask questions or make comments at any point throughout the presentation by typing your question in the question box and clicking send. If you cannot see the question box, click on the orange box with the white arrow in the upper right corner of your screen to open the question box area, and Kim will be answering all the questions that you submit at the end of the presentation today. Kim Howard graduated from Morehead State University with an undergraduate degree in moderate to severe disabilities and graduate degrees in learning and behavior disorders and counseling. She taught Fleming County's structured classroom for children with autism or autism-like issues, was a member of Fleming County's autism cadre, and was assigned to work in her district with classroom teachers who had students with autism that needed additional support. In the past, Kim has helped the district decide on a diagnosis of educational autism when needed. In addition, she spent 2 years developing structured unit classrooms in preschool, elementary, and high school in Fleming and Menifee counties. In her current role at KATC, Kim provides direct training and technical assistance to education staff, social and community personnel, counselors, job coaches, and families. And without further ado, I'd like to switch my screen over today to our presenter, Kim Howard. Good morning, Kim.
Good morning.
I am switching the screen over to you now.
All right. Is it? Okay, there we go.
There we go.
All right, are we up?
Yes, I can see you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Dee. Hi, guys. Thank you for joining me to talk about toilet training or potty training. Forgive me if I say potty training. I probably will. It's a hard topic and very much needed for the children that we serve. And sometimes even when I say children, I'm including older students or older children that are at home as well that are still struggling with this very important life skill, something that will have great impact on their life. So hopefully when you leave today, you will leave with an understanding of strategies on how to toilet train a child with autism. I hope that you'll leave with an understanding of where to get started on toilet training your child or student, and then you will also leave with some resources at the end to help you get started. That's my favorite part when I go to a training is the ideals and the resources that people can give to me sometimes, because it takes a lot of time and effort to find things out there that are good quality. So at the end there are several websites. So is my child ready for toilet training? Some of the things that you want to think about is, or are, does my child stay dry at night or during naps? Are they aware that they need to go to the bathroom? If they aren't, we'll talk about that also, so don't panic at this point. If you're going, oh no, my child's not aware, it's okay, we'll talk about that later. Are they aware if they've used the diaper? So just looking at, are they noticing that toileting is happening? It's an important first step to being able to be toilet trained. And if you're not aware, then I'll provide some strategies for that at the end. So where do we get started at? So I've had a lot of students come through my classrooms over the year, and then also have had my own child that we worked with potty training. And I think any educator or parent knows how hard and sometimes it can be such a battle to get a child potty trained. And it's important for so many reasons. Potty training is important for the social aspect of it. As children begin to get older and they're still in diapers, it can affect them socially. Other children that are already potty trained will notice that they're still in diapers. So that typically what I see in the school setting is that, you know, once kids are in kindergarten and first grade, other kids begin to know if they're still in a pull-up. So it's an important thing to get started on. And then also looking at life skills and independence. A child needs to be potty trained because using the bathroom is something that we all do multiple times a day. It's a skill that you're going to need your whole entire life. So a child or teenager who gets potty trained is going to be much more successful. So I hope that you leave with some ideas on ways to get started with it. So the child must have a way to communicate that they need a potty. And that's a whole training on communication. But we have to look at, can this child tell me that they need to use the bathroom? So whether they have the words, maybe they're verbal and they can say, I need the potty, or I need to use the toilet. Maybe it's a PEX card, so it's a picture card that has a picture of the bathroom on it. Maybe you're going to use sign language. It doesn't matter to me. It should be appropriate to the child and your setting. And you should make sure that however they're communicating that information is shared at the home setting, at the school setting, so it's consistent. And so that the child knows what to expect and how to let you know that they need to potty. We also have to address sensory issues. Using the bathroom, there's a lot of issues. You're taking on and off clothes, you're sitting on a cold seat, there's water involved, there's noises, and there's a lot of sensory issues with diapers. Some children, they are routine-based. So when I need to use the bathroom, I use my pull-up because that's what I do, and that's how this works. I always use my pull-up to use the potty because that's how it's worked for the last 5 or 6 years of my life. So when we're looking at potty training, we have to look at it from the aspect of they're not being difficult, they're not being resistant necessarily for the sake of being resistant, but autism has some children with autism frequently are routine-based, and by that I mean they do the same things over and over sometimes because that's how it works in their life. They like that structure and that setting, and so using the bathroom has been structured for them, and maybe they've used pull-ups. I had a student who we struggled with potty training for 6 months or 8 months, and we were not having a lot of success. And what I found was that for him, we had to take away the pull-up and put him in underwear. And I'm not anti-pull-up. For some kids, those are great and they'll work, but it's something that you have to think about and consider. So he needed to, as long as he had on the pull-up, he was going to use the bathroom in that because that's how it had always worked for him. So we had to put him into big boy underwear, and he was probably about, I want to say he was about 9 at the time. So we had to transition him out to underwear. So for him, we started wearing underwear on top of the pull-ups, and then eventually we totally took away the pull-ups because it was hard for him to give those up. So even looking at those kinds of issues, routines. And something else that you need to do is take data before you even start. And before you even do say, I'm going to potty train this child, I had a principal come in to me and tell me one time, he's 7 years old, don't you think it's about time you potty trained him? And I just thought, if you have no idea, I would love to have him potty trained, but he, that particular child, he wasn't ready yet. He did not have a good way to communicate. He did not have, he had a lot of sensory issues that we were still trying to address when it came to the bathroom, and so the first place that I would start is taking data. When does the child use the bathroom? So I know a lot of, if you're working from a school system, I know a lot of schools now take bathroom data for Medicaid logs. Schools can get reimbursed for that. So they have classroom assistants for the teacher that takes data, was the pull-up wet or dry, or the diaper, was it wet or dry? So if you can look at and you look for the pattern of, every day at about, when we go to the bathroom at 9:30, they're already wet. So then maybe we need to go to the bathroom at 9. So that data will be important, and I'll talk about it later on a little bit more. It will definitely be very useful to you. And we'd have to think about reinforcement. Reinforcement is a powerful evidence-based practice for children with autism. And in the beginning, you may need to start out with powerful rewards. And that's going to be different for every child. Some children I've had children that they got a little M&M every time they used the potty in the beginning, or then maybe when they, I'm just going to say pooped, maybe when they pooped, they got 10 M&Ms because pooping was a much harder skill for them to do on the toilet than peeing was. Um, so that's something to think about. Some kids are, maybe it's an edible reward. For other children, with my son, when we potty trained him, he was incredibly interested in Hot Wheels. And so there were certain Hot Wheels that were kept in the basket, and I kept them in the bathroom because I knew that I needed to reward him right away. And so whenever he used the bathroom, he got to choose a Hot Wheel out of the basket to play with. And that was a home setting, so I was able to do that. And at that time, you could get Hot Wheels for reasonably cheap, and we had lots of friends that supplied them with us. So, and the funny thing for him was that he would play with that for that day, and then he was still young enough that he would not remember that he'd already received that as a reward. So as long as there were about 10 or 15 choices in the basket that he got to choose his reward out of, I could drop those Hot Wheels back in the basket after a few days, and he didn't notice. He didn't catch on for probably about 6 months, and at that point he didn't need the reward anymore. So just something you can think about is, so first you're going to take your data, and then you're going to think about what kind of reinforcement can I provide this child. Children with autism frequently don't respond or don't know how to respond to social praise. So a lot of people say, well, I'm just going to say, good job, that's great, and that might be okay for your student, but it also might not be. You might have to put some serious thought and effort into what are some good reinforcements. Maybe I had students that when they used the potty, after they used the potty and washed their hands, they immediately got 5 minutes on the iPad to play a favorite game. There's no right or wrong answer here. It's what's correct for the child and for your setting. So laying a groundwork for success. So before you are potty training, before you even start, here are things that you can go ahead and be doing. Use the bathroom for all toileting activities. So if you have a child that's still in diapers, still in a pull-up, make sure you take them into the restroom to change their underpants, to change their diaper, to change their pull-up, because sometimes what I see is that at home, if you're comfortable in it, you're at home and you're a parent who's trying to work with their child, you might lay them in the floor, especially if you have an older child. Maybe they're laying on a bed to get their pull-up changed. Well, you need to look at how can I transition this to the bathroom. I had older students that when I taught high school that we were working on toileting with, and I taught them to stand up while their diaper was changed or while their pull-up was changed, because there was no way for us, they could not comfortably lay down in the bathroom to be changed. And that is, when you think about it, we lay babies down to be changed. And so I knew for my students that some of them I knew I would probably not ever be able to potty train because of medical issues, because of they just did not feel that sensation. And I had children that sometimes had bowel leakage and things like that, so they were not going to be totally potty trained. So I looked at it for them. We started using the bathroom for all activities because I wanted them to be as independent as possible in changing their own diaper. So if you do run into that, I've had teachers that say, well, I don't need to work on this at all for them. We're just going to do all of the changing our own selves for the rest of his life. And I said, well, that sounds okay now because he's 6 or he's 10, but when he's a teenager, when he's an adult man, it sets them up into situations that, if we can avoid, makes a lot of sense. So I use the bathroom for all of my students for all activities. Like if they're any kind of toileting activity, it happened in the bathroom, even if that meant that they needed to learn how to stand up beside the commode, or they needed to learn how to take on and off their own pull-up if they were not going to be independently able to use the actual toilet and not need diapers or not need a pull-up. Then I looked at how can I give them as much independence as possible. I think that's important to think about too when we talk about potty training, because not every child will be able to be potty trained. That's just a hard reality in life sometimes, that some of our children, some of our students will need support with that throughout their life. So when I ran into situations like that where it was not appropriate to look at potty training in the context of this child will use the toilet independent was my goal, then I looked at it in the context of I want to make this child, the student, as independent as possible in the bathroom, in taking care of their own toileting needs. So maybe that means I teach them how to change their own diapers or change their own pull-up if they're able. So I had some students, I had a couple of students that they changed their own pull-up. They would, wipe themselves up. I know they needed a spot checker sometimes. They needed somebody to make sure that things were getting clean sometimes. But they were much more independent than they were when they came to me. So that was my goal with them. And then I started out by moving toileting activities to the bathroom, even if that meant, standing up to change a diaper. So, and if appropriate, allow the child to see others. And now this is obviously going to be at home probably. If you're seeing others use the bathroom, because sometimes what happens for children with autism is they've not spent a lot of time in the bathroom for the context of using the toilet. They go in there to take a bath, or maybe they went in there to wash their hands, but they may not know what toileting is. So with my son, my husband, peed in the toilet in front of him, and that's okay because we were at home. Now I know in a school context that's probably not going to work out well, but what I did do for some of my students was that they went into the restroom. They went into the restroom where all the children were at, and just kind of not looking under stalls, but just seeing what's happening in there, what's going on, so that they knew. And the way that I addressed that was maybe I used a doll to model that for them, because it wouldn't be appropriate to let them watch me use the bathroom if you're not related and you're not my child. But something to think about. And there also you can find video self-modeling. So maybe you're going to make a video of a doll using the bathroom, and that's going to be one of your evidence-based practices that you put into place. So also think about watching videos and reading books about toileting. So there are a ton of books out there that are geared towards younger children. So if you're potty training or toilet training an older child, then you might need to go to social narratives. Maybe you need a social story that talks about using the toilet. Just so they know that that's what's happening. So we're going to start out, I'm going to talk about two different kinds of toilet training. And I like this picture of going to the potty. So this time, usually I'm bad for putting all my visual supports at the end of a PowerPoint, but this time I thought I would just kind of embed them throughout the PowerPoint. So visual supports is another great evidence-based practice that you can use for teaching children to use the toilet. So this here is an example of the steps. So this might be up in your bathroom. Maybe it's on the wall in your potty. Maybe if you are a parent or a teacher and you have children who are going out in the public, you're going on a field trip, you're going to a museum, maybe you have a little quick cue card that you can pull out of your pocket or pull out of your purse or diaper bag or whatever you have that you can just quickly stick up on the wall while they're using the bathroom, so they have a prompting reminder of the steps that they need to use the bathroom. Visual supports it's a powerful evidence-based practice for children with autism. So the first method of toilet training that we're going to talk about is called intensive toilet training. And I will say up front that I have not ever chosen to do this particular one. I just wanted you to know that it was out there in case you did. I've never chosen to do this one because of some of the cons about it. Some of the more difficult aspects of this one is that it's very, hence its name, it's very intensive. This is probably more appropriate for a younger child that you're just first trying out. If you have an older student who has had failed attempts at potty training, this is not the method I would choose at all. Primarily what I've seen this be done with are younger children, preschool age, and is what I would think. And the way that it works is you give the child a lot of fluid to drink, as much as they're willing to drink, and then you have scheduled times to sit on the toilet. I see a spelling error, sorry guys. You have scheduled times to sit on the toilet, and the child is kind of prompted through all of the steps of using the bathroom. And so the way that this would work is that the child gets up in the morning, and as soon as they get up, they begin drinking fluids, and you take them to the toilet, and you let them sit. And so they're going to sit for 5 minutes, or maybe 10 minutes. It's up to you. So they're going to go and they're going to sit on the toilet for a little bit. So this is not a quick method. And then if the child uses the toilet, if they pee, then they get off the toilet and they go on their way. And they go on and they drink some more, and you put them back on the toilet every 3 to 5 minutes until they use the bathroom. And then when they have success, so you place the child on the toilet while they're every time that the whole day that they're awake for 3 to 5 minutes at times until they pee. And then once they pee, then you give them a break, about a half hour or an hour break, and then you send them back to the toilet. So if you're using this method, you are going to literally be spending almost every waking moment in the toilet. Ways that they suggest to help the child stay on the toilet is maybe you're watching a fun video, maybe you're doing a puzzle on the toilet, because the child's going to be spending a lot of time on the toilet because you're giving them lots of fluid to drink, so that they have a lot of reason to pee, and then you're placing them on the toilet for 3 to 5 minutes at a time to see if they will pee, and then if they do pee, then you give them, then maybe they don't need to go back on for an hour. You know, you kind of keep a record to see how long can the child go between using the bathroom. And then if they don't pee at that point, if they don't void, then you put them back on the toilet every 10 minutes until you have success. One of the things that they suggested with this was, now if the child does, when the child does use the bathroom, you reward and reinforce and encourage lots of smiles and whatever appropriate reinforcer for the child. And then if once you've reinforced, then you allow the child to go on, to go off the toilet, and then you encourage them to drink more, drink, and then you place them back on the toilet. So this method works for some children because it gives them lots of opportunities, and the way that this is supposed to work is that you can potty train with this in a couple of days, basically. Some of the suggestions that the people that suggested this was that you might want to have a partner. You might need help for this method because you're literally spending a lot of time in the bathroom. You're spending a ton of time in the restroom helping this child on and off the potty, making sure they stay on there for 3 to 5 minutes. So I've never used this method just because it's very intense, but I just wanted you to know that it was out there because I've had some parents come to me and say, listen, we're going to blitz attack this. This is the method we want to do. Do you have any suggestions? Have you heard of this? So I have heard of it. The cons for me on this is that you're spending a ton of time in the restroom. And you're going to need to map that out. So realistically, in a school setting, this would not work well unless you're going to totally dedicate people to helping this child in and out of the restroom and making sure that they're drinking and making sure that they're getting in and out on the restroom. So that's kind of the cons for me. And also some children may not respond well to this. I work with students that they don't like to be in the bathroom. So this might become a battle if they're having to spend so much time in the bathroom. And sitting on the toilet for 3 to 5 minutes, it doesn't sound long, but it could be the longest 5 minutes of their life. So that's the reason why I've never done it personally, but I just wanted you to know that it's out there. So if the child is staying dry, then you gradually increase the time between placing the child back on the toilet. So you start upping the amount of minutes before the child gets back on the toilet. And then if a child has an accident, you're decreasing the time. So obviously keeping data in this method is going to be very important. Something that you're going to have to think about is how can I keep the data. So next we're going to talk a little bit about habit training. that is the method that I've used. Is basically you're working off of habits. So before you get started with this method, once again, you're going to have kept data. I like this little cartoon here with the dinosaurs. I'm sorry, I've read the script and I can't go through it, and it's the potty that's stomping away. So I thought, that was a funny little potty joke. So habit training can be considered for children who don't necessarily show awareness of toileting. I've used this for students that they didn't seem to know when they went. I didn't have any indication that they were using the bathroom or that they were wet. Because sometimes the way that I've known that it was the time to start potty training the student was the student would come up to me and say wet or indicate that they were wet. So I knew that they were aware that something was happening, and that that going to the bathroom we could get them dry again. So, but some students won't ever show that. So habit training is a great way to fall back on, and this also works really well for older students that other methods have failed on. So first you have to keep a record of when the child is going to the bathroom. You're going to keep a record on that, and then you're going to set up a routine based on the schedule of going to the bathroom 5 to 15 minutes before the child normally voids. So one of the important things for habit training is that the child has to have a visual schedule. You have to have a visual schedule in place for the child for habit training to be successful, I feel like. So especially for children with autism. Visual supports are huge, and if you have a visual schedule, then you just place potty on the visual schedule and check that, and then it should be all right for those kiddos. So if you don't have a visual schedule in place before you start potty training your child, it's something that you might want to think about getting into place, because it will help you with the transition to the bathroom, especially when you're going from the child wears pull-ups and diapers, so maybe you're only going to the bathroom once or twice in the morning, once or twice in the afternoon, before bedtime when they first wake up. So now if you're working on towards the goal of having them use the toilet independently, then you're going to need to go to the bathroom much more often than you had been previously. So just something to think about there. So bathroom breaks are definitely on a set schedule. And once the child's in the bathroom, you have them sit on the toilet for 5 minutes, which is also a long time. So one of the things that I've done when I've done this method is that the child has an activity to do on the toilet. I know that sounds a little weird, that you're going to the toilet and the kid is playing with this toy with a lap desk maybe, but 5 minutes is a long time to sit. So I've also had a little short 5-minute cartoon clips on the iPad that I've kind of set over to the side, and the child is watching that cartoon while they sit on the toilet in the hopes that they will use the bathroom. One of the things I will say about habit training is that if the child doesn't use the bathroom while they're sitting there, and I've taken good data, and I know that based on my data that they're normally going to void they normally void at 10 o'clock. When we go at 10 o'clock, they're wet. So now we're going to the bathroom at, say, 9:30, 9:45. We're going to the restroom, and we're sitting there, and they were dry when we got there. Then I am going to try to make sure that that I've kept my data. And so if they don't use the bathroom, and I know that this is the time when they normally should, I might run water. I might turn the sink on and have the sound of water happening. Something like that. And then if I don't have success, if they've sat on the toilet for 5 minutes and they have a bathroom, then we get up and we go back to whatever we're doing, and I would bring my student back in 15 minutes and then see, are they dry, are they wet, and then have them sit back on the toilet for 5 minutes. So if the student has an accident, you don't want to make a big deal out of it. You don't fuss about it. You don't shame them for it. You just clean it up with as little attention to it as possible, because for some students you have to be careful that I had students that it's the soggy potato chips, I guess. They were very attention seeking, and then if they found out that they could get attention for having accidents, then that became their goal. They didn't mind if it was the scolding attention, or they didn't mind if it was, they didn't necessarily want the reinforcer. They were so much more reinforced by the attention for having had an accident. So in those cases, I've had to make sure that we flip it, that when you use the potty successfully, you get a ton of attention, you get your reinforcer, but if you have an accident, I just know it's okay. Accidents are going to happen. This is a learning process, so we just clean it up. We just clean it up. We don't draw a bunch of attention to it. I don't say, I've seen people, we're walking back down the hallway and they'll be like, oh, you know what, we're potty training, but he just peed in his pants. And I think that that's crazy. I think that we have to remember that they're people, they are people first. They are children first. We have to be respectful because this is very much personal, very private affair that we're assisting them with. So I think it's important that if children do have accidents, that we give as little attention to that as possible, just clean them up quickly and go back to the schedule. And then just adjust your data and look at when you should be going to the bathroom. So troubleshooting. I potty trained a child that there wasn't lots of trouble to shoot. It seems to be one of the consistent things for potty training. There are so many things that can go wrong in potty training. I've had students stick their hand up the toilet pipe. They like the water, so they ram their hand up the toilet pipe. I thought I was going to have to call. I thought I was going to have to call our poor janitor to come and pry his arm out because I thought he was stuck at the elbow down the pipe, but thankfully he was not. So there are lots of things that can go wrong when you are potty training children. So we'll talk about those next. So I like this little visual support here with the marker. So this is your toilet paper, and that line represents where you tear off the toilet paper. I have students in the past that either would only use one sheet of toilet paper to try to clean themselves up, which was definitely not enough, or they would use half the roll because it's so much fun to spin the toilet paper off that roll because it kind of spins out and it fluffs all out everywhere. Like I had a student tell me, but it's like a flat cloud. They like to spin the toilet paper off of there and they're like, but it's a flat cloud. If you spin it hard enough, it just fluffs into the air. So this is a wonderful little visual support that draws the line. So when I potty trained students that had those kinds of issues, there was a marker on the wall, a little piece of paper, a line, whatever is appropriate for you. I've seen people use a favorite cartoon character. It doesn't make any difference what it looks like as long as it's functional for the student. But there was a little, I had a guy with a Superman with his arm out, and Superman stuck his arm out, and we did a little social story that said, if you're a little, not a social story, but a power card, and it said, Superman uses toilet paper down to this line, and if you want to be like Superman, you'll stop at the line. You'll stop taking toilet paper at the line. So just a little easy way to take that problem out. And also the other aspect of potty training is that I've seen students become completely independent, but they needed an adult in the bathroom still to prompt them through some of the things that could have been taught with a visual support, like the steps for using the toilet, the steps for washing their hands, like this little line. Because for my guy with the Superman, we were having to stay in the bathroom with him at the end because he would fluff out all the toilet paper because he'd like to see the clouds. And so we solved that issue to where we were able to allow him to be independent in the restroom, which is important. So our first problem is bowel movements. A lot of times what happens is that children first are potty trained with urine. It's much simpler to potty train children, using the bathroom for pee versus using the bathroom for a bowel movement. So don't be shocked if that happens to you. It's a very common thing. So first you're going to keep track of when bowel movement happens, and also you're going to start looking for signs that the child needs to defecate. So you're looking for a pattern here because it tends to be that people tend to have a pattern on when they'll defecate as well. And then you're looking for signs that it's happened. For some children, they begin to hide. I had students who would hide under tables or hide under desks, or they'd always go back and stand behind a bookcase. I had a student who would always go and stand at the same spot in the window and look out the window when he was pooping. And so those were my signs that became, to me, I knew when I saw that child gravitate back to that part and look out that window at that same time every day, I knew that was the time to take him to the bathroom and to help them sit on the toilet and relax. That's the hard thing with bowel movements is that you have to be able to relax a little bit there to feel comfortable enough to have a bowel movement. And then also thinking about providing a larger reward for success. It's a much more complicated thing to potty train for bowel movements than it is for urine. So just something to think about. Another problem that is very common, they will not sit down on the commode. Or they will not stay sitting down long enough to pee. I've had students in the past who will get up. They're peeing. They are peeing, and midstream they hop off the commode and they just take off across the they just hop off the commode and they're walking away and they're still peeing. So it's going all down their legs and in their clothes. So make sure that their feet are supported. That's a sensory issue. It could be a sensory issue. Having your feet swing in the air can be frightening when you don't have your sense of balance. Maybe you don't know how far it is to the ground, so make sure maybe they need a footstool to support their feet. Maybe you're going to use a potty seat over a commode or use a potty chair. I've had students who were mortally terrified of the commode. It's this big, huge bowl of water, and you want me to suspend my hiney over it. It's a little scary if you think about that from their perspective sometimes. So think about ways that you can make the commode either smaller if it's a young child and you can use a potty chair, or maybe you need to use a potty seat over the commode. Pair the toilet with high-value reinforcers. So I had students that they only got M&Ms for sitting and using the bathroom. Success. They did not get M&Ms any the rest of the day. M&Ms only happened for toileting. So maybe you need to figure out what's a high-value reinforcer, and maybe they only get it during this toileting time. Make sure students know how long they'll sit, or children. So use a visual timer. This is a great example. Oops. Go back. This is a great example. This little clock here is a great example of a visual timer. So the way that it works is here it's set for 10 minutes, and as the 10 minutes disappear, the red will be gone. So as the red goes away, when all the red is gone, then time is up. Just so that kids know, and there are lots of different forms of visual timers, and there are even some that will fit right on your phone now, or some apps that you can download for your phone. So another common issue is flushing. Afraid of flushing. We'll start there. So if you're using a commode that is not an automatic flusher, then maybe in the beginning you don't flush until the child is away from the toilet. And then also give advance warning of flushing. So you're going to use your visual support. You're going to have the steps up on the wall, the little picture cue cards that show when toilet flushing happens, so that the child isn't surprised. Allow the child to have control of the flushing. So let them flush if they will, or at least let them step away from the commode and say, okay, I'm flushing now, so that it takes away that issue. And then if it's an automatic toilet, those have been my nemesis sometimes in the past. Those things, they sound great because you don't have to remember to flush, but sometimes they flush while you're sitting on them, and sometimes if you have a student who's bouncing around, it'll flush multiple times, and then if you have a child who's afraid of that, that can just be very traumatic for everyone involved. And so I had to carry a note card with me to place over. There's a little sensor on the back of the commode if it's an automatic flusher, and you just put a Post-it note or an index card or something to cover that so that it won't flush while the child is sitting on it. So those are some tips that might be helpful. Here's the opposite problem of flushing. Children who like to flush too much. I've definitely had some of these in my classroom career. They like to flush. They like the water and it's flowing, and they don't necessarily have, I know, I don't want to stick my hand in the commode. It's dirty. It's someplace that, to me, I know that that's dirty, but children, and especially children with autism, they may not know that. So for a child who's flushing too much, once again, this is a great little visual support that shows when flushing happens. It's not until step number 5. I had a student who went in to the bathroom and he wanted to flush before he would sit down. He would flush before he would sit down, and then he wanted to flush at the end. So this little visual support is a great way to just kind of pull through those steps, and this link on the page takes you to that. I've had some students to where it got so extreme, and for my little guy in the beginning, I had to block access to the toilet handle. So I had to put my hand over the toilet handle to break him of the habit of flushing before he would sit down. And so maybe you need to hide it. So some of the other suggestions that I've had is I've seen teachers kind of place a towel over the toilet. If you had a handle like that you could kind of hide it behind the towel so that it was out of sight. Or give the child something else to hold. Maybe they're holding a paper towel in their hand. Maybe they're holding a washcloth in their hand so that their hand is busy while they're sitting on the commode. Maybe it has to be a favorite toy. I'm not sure. That is up to you in your situation. I've had situations to where we had bathroom toys for students that we were potty training. So it was 2 or 3 favorite items that were relatively waterproof and very easy to clean and sanitize, and they stayed in a bucket only in the bathroom. So you could only hold those while you were sitting on the commode. So maybe that's something that you have to think about. Playing in the water. I told you about my little guy who was a huge favorite thing of his. He loved to play in the water, and he would dive into the toilet bowl basically, or he would even put his feet in if I didn't, if we weren't there quick enough to block that behavior. So some of the things that you can try is provide a toy with a water feature to play in the toilet. So for him, we found one of those little handheld games that have the water inside, and you press the buttons and you're trying to get the rings to go on the hook, or you're trying to shoot the balls around. So it had water inside of it so that he still got access to water, but not toilet bowl water. Use a padded lap desk. So maybe when they're sitting down, if they're reaching their hands down at that point, maybe you put a lap desk on their lap, and they're doing an activity on the desk. And then make sure that this isn't a sensory issue. This could be a sensory issue. So provide water play at appropriate times. For my guy, we did a water table that he played with at a different time of the day. So in the morning when he came in the afternoon, we made sure a couple of times a day he had access to play in water appropriately versus playing in toilet water. Smearing. Smearing is a huge, huge problem sometimes for children with autism. On so many levels. I know parents, and I know teachers, and I know my own self. I've been through this with students who smeared feces on themselves. It's just devastating for the parent and for anyone involved in this. It's embarrassing, it's smelly, it's just not a fun thing to have happen. I have on here, I should have put this one as first, stay calm if this happens, and don't be shocked. It's a sensory issue. It can be a sensory issue. There's the textures involved, and it's warm, and so if you think that this is a sensory issue, then you try to meet the sensory needs. So I'm going to go through this in order first, and then I'll do my little side talk. So look at the ABCs of the behavior. So break down what is happening before they smear, so the behavior is definitely smearing, and what's the consequences. So I've been in settings that the consequences was that the adult fussed at the child. Oh, you've smeared poop everywhere, and it's nasty, and this is so nasty, and now we all have to have a bath, and this is just gross. So maybe this child is consequence. Maybe he was attention seeking, and the only way he could get this big burst of attention was through smearing of feces, or maybe he was seeking the bath and he wanted to take a bath. So you have to look at the ABCs of the behavior and try to decide what is happening. Is it attention-seeking behavior, or is it a sensory issue? Maybe he's seeking a bath, or maybe it's the texture of the feces, and look at how can we replace that appropriately. So if it's an attention-seeking behavior, then I would provide very look at ways that I can provide this child appropriate ways to get a burst of attention throughout his day so that he doesn't have to get attention through smearing. If it is he is seeking a bath, so he's seeking the water, then maybe I build water play into his day, or maybe I make sure that he has a PEX card or the ability through his words or sign language to ask for a bath appropriately. If this is a matter of a texture issue, one of the most difficult kiddos that I had it was a texture issue. They really liked that texture material, and they didn't have, so for me, playing in feces, I know I get all the social connotations of that. It's very much socially shunned, but for children and adolescents with autism, they don't always understand the social rules, and so I know the social rule says I never touch my feces, but they don't have that rule, so they don't understand our reaction to it. So if the child is smearing feces because of a sensory issue of that it's the texture, then you look for other things of a familiar texture. So I had a little girl who very much liked to smear feces, and we looked at the ABCs of behavior, and what we found for her was that it was a huge texture issue. She liked the temperature, she liked that texture, and so what we ended up doing for her was we thickened lotion. And also for her it was a smell. She liked strong odors. So we thickened lotion and we heated it up, and we provided her access to it a few times throughout the day so that she got access to meeting that sensory needs much more socially appropriate and health-wise much more appropriate. So those are some things to think about. Also, you want to rule out medical issues, rectal prolapse, hemorrhoids. Maybe they're in pain and that's why they have their hands down there. Maybe they have one of these issues, pica. They could be eating it, and that's another thing that I've seen as well. Maybe they're constipated and using the bathroom is painful. And so smearing is just a result of putting their hand down there to see what's happening on that end of their body. Once again, I'll say stay calm, do not overreact. And it's very hard to stay calm. It is hard to stay calm during this because there's so many social things and you don't want to get it on you. So in my classroom, when I had students who did this, we had, I always kept a change of clothes with me as the adult. I made sure that they had a change of clothes too, but I always kept a change of clothes for me as well, just so that I could be cleaned up as well at the end. So you want to clean up the child and the area with as little attention as possible. So don't make a big deal out of this. Don't provide this huge burst of attention. Don't shame them. Don't tell them they're bad. Avoid that and just clean it up and clean the area up with as little attention as possible. And then you want to look at how do you keep the child's hand out of their pants. So if this is a child who is putting their hands in their pants, maybe they need to wear pants with a belt, so that they don't have as much access to get their hands in their pants. Maybe they need to wear a little bit tighter fitting pants. I had a student who wore jogging pants all the time, which is, that's okay, that's very common. So it was easy access to get his hands in his pants. And for him, what we ended up doing was we put a pair of bicycle type pants under his jogging pants. So they were a little tighter. A little harder to get access into, so it slowed him down from getting his hands in his pants to smear feces. Also think about reading social stories about using the bathroom appropriately. So feces goes in the toilet. That's just where it goes. And we wipe with toilet paper or wipes, whatever your student is going to use. So you're going to look for social stories that talk about how we use the bathroom appropriately. Make sure you I would avoid saying in the social story, we don't smear poop on ourselves. I've seen some poorly written social stories that spend so much time talking about why we don't smear, and they forget about so if I write a social story, I only focus on the positive. So I'm only going to tell that child exactly the steps I want them to do. I'm not going to focus on the negative parts, just for the fact that sometimes children with autism have selective attention. So maybe they're only going to remember one or two things out of this whole, 5-line story. And the way life goes, the way my life goes anyways, is if I write negative things in there, that'll be the part they remember. So I always try to think about that. Um, Provide a ton of positive praise and reinforcement when using the bathroom appropriately. And then also think about meeting sensory needs. So provide the child with Play-Doh, mud, finger paint, other ways to access that texture of material. And then also thinking about pungent odors, so other ways for them to access sensory materials with pungent odors appropriately. Using an unfamiliar bathroom. This can be very hard, getting kids to go into a different bathroom because we're routine-based. Children with autism are very routine-based sometimes. So I use this bathroom, and this is the one bathroom that I use. So make sure when you're teaching potty training that you teach generalization. So if you're in a classroom with just one bathroom, after you get, the child's having some success, maybe you go down to the teacher's lounge bathroom if you're still needing to go in with them, and then maybe you work your way out to the bathroom in the hallway with, where all the children go. So maybe you go during a time when there's no one else in there at first. So you're exposing them to different bathrooms. And if you're a parent and you're potty training at home, then maybe you have a house with 2 bathrooms. So you make sure you use both bathrooms for potty training. Or if you don't have 2 bathrooms, maybe you go to grandma's house and you use grandma's bathroom. And then you use the bathroom at the store. So you're teaching them generalization, that potty training and using the bathroom can take place in bathrooms that look very different. And these suggestions right here will help you to do that. So make sure that your communication for bathroom travels with you. So however your child's going to communicate, that needs to go with you. So words are easy and sign language will travel easily. But if you have a student who's using PECS or a picture card, then you need to have that with you. Begin the routine of using the bathroom at home right before you leave. So if we're going to the store, we'll go to the bathroom right before we go there. So it lessens the need to go. Bring familiar items with you. So maybe you have this one hand towel and that's the hand towel that you use, and that can be the familiar part of your routine. Or maybe you are going to bring the same type of soap. My son is very funny about the different types of soap that we use. So for him, sometimes I'll travel along with some soap that's the same thing at home. So that's his that's his request sometime. So you just have to look at what's something easily that I can bring with you, and maybe that's not possible, and it won't be for everybody, and that's okay. So you just look at what parts of this you can do. Bring your visual supports with you. Laminate those things and tuck them in your purse. Make them small. Tuck them in a diaper bag or a man bag, whatever appropriate. Take them with you, and just have a way to tack them up really quickly. I had a parent who did a great job of bringing the steps for using the bathroom with them, and what they had done was they had bought some sticky magnet tape, and they stuck it. A lot of public bathrooms are metal, or they have a little piece of metal in there somewhere, so they stuck it up with a magnet, and it was already on the back, so it was very easy to do. I've had parents who traveled with just a little piece of tape and just stuck it up real quick. And it was worth the effort for them, for their child to be able to be independent. So just easy things to think about. And this goes back to generalization. Another issue that is common is that children sometimes become toilet trained only at one location. So I've had this in my classroom. Maybe the child is only potty trained at home. Maybe they're only potty trained at school, and those 2 places haven't met yet. So first off, make sure that you're sharing information. If you're toilet training your child and you're in the home setting and they're going to school, to daycare, wherever they're going, share that information with the adults who are helping to care for them so that they can carry over. It's a great way to generalize. And if you're a teacher in a school setting and you have a student who is potty trained at school but he's not potty trained at home yet, send home those visual supports if you can. Send home the visual supports. Send home the information for communication. Send all of that home. And then look at the environment. See what's different. Maybe there's a noise in this bathroom. Maybe the toilet's really loud when it flushes. Maybe there's something happening in that bathroom that's different from the other one. Share your materials, and I've already said that, and your communication cards across the board. Those are very important. And I will say this about being toilet trained at only one location. I frequently get asked questions from teachers or parents who say, my child is potty trained at home, and the other setting, whoever that is, they will not work with him. They are not having any success at all. And so should I even continue, should I even bother with doing this should I even bother to potty train at school if the parents are not going to potty train at home? And I say yes. Even if it's the opposite, if it's the parent potty training at home and the school says, we're not ready to work on that yet, then I say yes. Wherever they can be potty trained at, that's okay, because eventually it's going to generalize and the other setting will get ready for that. It's a frequent frustration when I was a teacher. I had parents at home who their child would be potty trained, and they weren't ready to work on it at home. And sometimes they're dealing with different issues and they have bigger concerns at the time than what I had. So that's okay. I would still definitely potty train. Children who have nighttime accidents. So make sure that you have a bedtime routine that includes going to the bathroom. So right before you go to bed, that child needs to use the bathroom. And then stop liquids. So juicy fruits like watermelon, grapes, and also drinking fluids. You want to stop that about 2 hours before bedtime to give your body time to process that. Now, I have some parents who tell me that their child goes to bed a couple of hours earlier than they do, and so they wake their child up to use the bathroom before the parent goes to sleep. That might be a suggestion for you. I wouldn't. I think you have to know your child and know if that's okay. In my house, my child would just never go back to sleep. They'd be like, "Oh yeah, it's morning, I'm up." So you have to decide if that's okay for you or not. But here are just a couple of suggestions. So resources. And I'll tell you a story really quickly before we talk about resources. Maybe my second year of teaching, I was working with a student who was 11 on potty training. And we'd taken our data, we'd done everything in the books, and I felt like I had a good handle on it and put a lot of effort and work into it. He was a big guy at 11. He probably was close to, I don't know, at least 200 pounds and over 5 foot tall, big guy. And we really felt like if he was potty trained that it would improve his quality of life and definitely improve our quality of life. And so we were working very hard with him, and our data showed what we found happening was that some days he was completely potty trained. After a little while, after the initial stage, the first week or so, we found there were days where he had 0 accidents and everything went exactly perfect. And then he would come to school the next day and we would have, 2 or 3 accidents that day. And I couldn't figure out what was happening, why one day he was potty trained and the other day he was not potty trained. And I finally just, after 2 weeks of this, I finally was at the end of my wits one day, and I sat down with him and I said, and I'm going to say Johnny, I said, Johnny, I said, I don't understand. I said, sometimes you pee in the potty and it goes great, and sometimes we have accidents. I said, I don't understand what's happening. And he looks at me and he goes, no pee on Barney. And he had, at that time, he had underwear that had Barney characters on them. And on days that he wore underpants with Barney on them, he would not have any accidents because he did not want to pee on Barney. And so I will be honest and say we went out and bought 2 more packages of Barney underpants in his size, and he had no more accidents. So eventually he would be an adult now. So I haven't spoken to his mom in a lot of years, but she was working on fading out the Barney characters and making them smaller on his underpants so that that would no longer be a concern once he grew into the routine. But and it just, I guess that's just a hysterical note of desperation. But it was interesting to see that he knew in the power of a favorite reinforcer. For him, Barney was hugely reinforcing, and he had just a few pair of underpants with Barney on them, and so on days that Barney was on the underpants, he would never have an accident. So anyways, we'll talk about resources next. This first book, Toilet Training for Individuals with Autism, is one of my favorite books for adults who are about to toilet train a child with autism. You can pick that up on Amazon, but I'll tell you, I picked mine up at half-price books for $3. One of the great places that you can sometimes pick books up for very cheap. And the other two stories are Everyone Poops and Even Firefighters Go to the Potty. So they are just children's books, and I chose these particular books because they are more age neutral, if that makes sense. They would probably be appropriate for students who were older if you were dealing with working with students who are a little older than typical. And now there are a ton of potty training books that are geared at preschool toddler age out there. So I wanted to show books that might work for students who are a little older, and they're just children's literature, and you can find those just about anywhere. Well, not just about anywhere, probably Amazon, a bookstore, someplace like that. This first link to Autism Speaks is they have like a PDF package for toilet training. It's a really great resource that you might send home to parents, and it also has some visual supports in it that you can print out, and it is free. The second one, this Preschoolology, has visual cue cards for potty training, so the ones that actually take you through the steps. This third article it's actually an article, and it's the TEACH approach, and it's applying structured teaching principles to toilet training. It was a very good read, and it also had some great depictions of visual supports that they have put into place for children with autism. This is a social narrative. This first one on here is a social narrative on using the urinal. That's a whole nother skill that we don't always think about for children with autism, is using the urinal. I work with some boys who are at the point of going into the actual men's room, and there's all sorts of social context that as a lady I have no idea how that works, but this was a great social narrative, and it's free. So this and the other two are also different links to visual supports and manuals as well. And this is a sequence. The first one on this, the Visual Aids for Learning, is a potty sequence, toilet training sequence. And this last one is the Joys of Potty Training, which goes through sequences, and I think might have social narratives on there, but you'd have to go and look. But anyways, these are my favorite resources for potty training. I don't know if there are any questions out there at this point. I hope I haven't confused you all and left you wondering, what is she talking about?
Okay, we do have so far I think it looks like one question.
Okay.
It says, I have autistic twins. One has a touch of movement every time he needs to be changed. He doesn't mind it being on him. What do I do? He will go pee when told to do so, but will not go on his own, and he is standing now too. The other twin doesn't like anything on him wet or dirty, and he will strip down, but he will not go to the bathroom on his own ahead of time.
So I would go back to the habit training probably. I don't know how old they are, but I would go back to the habit training and look at a visual schedule, because it sounded like both of them are kind of at the point of using the potty, and the one little guy wouldn't use it on his own. So if you go back to habit training, you're going to start out by prompting them through the steps. So you would take data to see when are they wet, when are they dry, and then you're going to go to the bathroom about 10 or 15 minutes before before your data shows that they are already wet, to try to catch that and get them into the habit. And then think about visual supports, putting up the steps for using the toilet in your bathroom. I think will be a huge help. And you're pointing those out and talking to them in the beginning and prompting them through it at first, and that's okay. That's where we all start out at.
Okay.
So,
it says they're 12 years old.
They're 12, so they're older. Yeah, I definitely would go with habit training. I definitely would go with habit training, and I would look at a visual schedule and set it up and make it a routine, and don't give up, if that makes sense. Don't get frustrated and because it's a complicated process to learn. This is not an easy skill. Sometimes, it just seems like it magically happens for some kids, but unfortunately, that's not necessarily the case for children with autism. But so think visual schedule, think habit training. So you're looking at the data, you're taking data to see when are they wet, when are they dry. And then you're using that data to base. They're going to go to the bathroom 10 or 15 minutes before they're normally wet, and then encouraging them to sit on the toilet. Think about high-value reinforcers. How can I reinforce them? What's something that maybe only happens in the bathroom, especially for your one little guy who doesn't want to sit on the commode? Go back to to some of those questions that talk about, or some of the troubleshooting for getting a child to sit. That's the angle that I would look at it from, is thinking about how can I up my motivation. So thinking about what's a big reinforcer, what's a big visual supports that I can put into place, and then making sure I have data so I kind of know when are they going to the bathroom, when are they not going to the bathroom, if that makes sense.
Okay, thank you, Kim. We don't have any other questions. And thank
Okay.
you so much for providing such valuable information today. It's been a wonderful webinar, a wonderful resource. I want to remind everybody that's online that the handouts for today, the presentation for today, you can download from your control panel under handouts, and the links to all of the resources that Kim went over are on those handouts as well. Thank you for attending today's webinar, and you can also view other webinars that we have. We have over 80 webinars on our YouTube channel, and that's KY Autism Training on YouTube. And you can view those anytime you want, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So thanks again, and everyone have a wonderful rest of your day. And thank you, Kim.
Thank you.